Hey, Fred, I'm gonna need you to get those stool samples out to Bakersfield tonight.
Are you kidding? Copy you.
Thank you for coming. We have Brianna Brennan today. Camera department has been in more countries than COVID at this point.
Pretty much.
And we have you here today coming to share your stories. Thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me.
No, not at all. What's just starting off as we're thinking, just to kind of hear what got you into the entertainment industry originally?
Really, it was my very lazy high school self who wanted to take an easy first period class, and we had broadcast, and I was like, great. Get to hang out, just mess around with my friends. This will be great. And throughout the class, I kind of just fell in love with it, the whole technical side of it and everything. And by the end of that semester, I was like, maybe I could do this for a living. Because at that point, I didn't really know what I wanted to do. So I was just trying stuff out. And so then I ended up applying to Washington State University, who has a pretty good journalism program. Okay. And I didn't know if I wanted to go journalism. I didn't really know what direction I wanted to go, but I'm like, this whole concept is interesting to me. So I ended up going there and figuring out I did not want to do journalism because that sounds like a lot and very heavy and stuff. But the dean there has been through everything. Has done, news, but also has done reality, has done scripted, kind of been all over the map. And so he had a bunch of contacts in LA for reality television. And so those of us who weren't really showing interest in the journalism side, he's like, hey, there's this other part of the industry that you might want to check out and might be more interesting to you. And that just hit a nerve. And I was like, this seems really cool. It's like all the best sides of both, I feel like. Uh-huh. So he was really my in, man. I mean, I did my bachelor's in about 3 years. I kind of just sped through that because I just wanted to get to the fun stuff.
Nice.
And yeah, I really fell in love with the whole camera side of thing, the technical side. I did a lot of editing while I was there, so that was a lot of fun. Asterisks. It takes a lot of time, but I learned a lot, which was good. But yeah, when I was ready to graduate, I was like, I gotta go down to LA. Go down.
Did the editing in that class, again, the tediousness, is all of that stuff, did that help lead towards the camera department?
It really did.
All right.
Yeah, it really did because it really, I mean, and people say this all the time, it comes full circle. You become a much better shooter when you know what the end product needs, So, and that was kind of more self-taught than anything. I never took an editing class. We had a club on the side where we all did our own little shows and stuff and edited them all together. And so that was a really fun trial and error, trying to figure that out.
What show did you shoot off of trial and error back there? Do you remember
We did, me and still one of my best friends to this day, Michelle, we did a cooking show. And our mascot for that college is the Cougars. So we called it Iron Coug, like Iron Chef. And it was, normally people will pick up shows that they already had running. And this was a brand new concept. And Michelle and I had never met before. They just threw us in together. And it was very, very run and gun, just like a cooking show would be.
That's
awesome. We actually had real students cooking and judges trying stuff out and filming the first one. I remember being like, oh, this is really cool. This is going to be really good. And then I get into the edit bay with it. I'm like, we don't have nearly enough stuff. So that's where I started learning that, oh, maybe this will be helpful to me.
It's always that first one when you go in. It's the mistakes, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
It's the mistakes when you're going in and you're like, never again. That's the one that goes through.
Yeah, it's how do I just film a whole cooking show and I have almost no shots of the food? That's
probably yeah. So you moved down to LA. Mm-hmm. What was your break into starting to get work down here?
I moved down with kind of a time limit. Mm-hmm. My parents did not really understand the whole industry, which I didn't really either, but I was 21 and didn't care. So they gave me enough money for 1 month. They're like, okay, you have to pay your second month's bills. So that was the timeline. I was like, okay, great, let's go. Yeah. Get down there. 3 weeks in to that first month, the dean from the college had a connection with a showrunner for an Animal Planet show who was looking for travel PAs. And so my dean put my name and I think 2 other guys' names in the hat, went into interview for it, and got that job 3 weeks into my first month.
Nice. Nice.
That was in that show I rode for probably 4 years or so. I stuck with that show for a long time.
Nice.
Yeah, that was really my big break, and that's where I learned almost everything.
Nice.
I really got my hands on a lot of the camera stuff, very small travel crew, so you get to learn a lot that way. And that was, I mean, if I hadn't gotten that.
Was there a lot of travel with it?
All over the United States. We weren't flying. The whole point they needed PAs was to drive the truck with all the gear. All over the country. So me and the other PA, his name's Kevin, we got real close, real fast.
Oh, man. That's the way. They had a PA driving around. That's brutal.
It was pretty astounding.
But you got the experience.
But I got all the experience, and it was such a good setup. The guys were so good.
Yeah.
And the guy they had like a tech soup position, so he was like a third camera operator, DIT, AC, like kind of did a little bit of everything. And he wanted to move up into shooter. And so once I was like, hey, I'm kind of interested in cameras, he was like, great, come here. Let me show you all this stuff, because if I train you, then I can move up, you know?
Nice.
So I got to learn everything from him, and he was a great teacher.
Oh, that's awesome.
Really got to get my hands on stuff. And I got lucky because the camera they were using was the exact same camera I learned on in school. So I got to look real smart, like, oh, I know where all the settings are in this camera and stuff. So that was super, super lucky.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice. Do a lot of your friends come from the crew community, or do you keep that separate?
No, I find it almost impossible to keep it separate. For a long, long time, almost, my entire friend group, my entire world was all from the industry.
Okay.
You know, I went from college directly, like with people who were going into the industry, got on travel shows. So I didn't really have any time outside of work.
Yeah.
You know, when I had breaks in between shows, I was sleeping. You know, there was no, and then when I did get together with people in LA, it was people I had met on other shows and stuff like that. So almost my entire social network was almost entirely industry people, which I think makes a lot of sense. It's a experience that is kind of hard to translate to people outside of the industry.
Yeah.
Especially travel related. I think I even kind of have a hard time relating to people who work like on set in LA, because at least they get to go home at night.
Yeah.
You know, it's similar, but I don't know. I feel like it's not quite the same camaraderie, because when you're out on a show for months and months and months, and you see the motherfuckers every single day in, day out, like they become your family in the best and the worst ways, you know?
Absolutely.
So that's, it's been very interesting. I've been growing my social network outside of the industry over the last couple of years, trying to like build a little more roots in LA. And it's been really fun and exciting, but definitely a different interaction. I'm just used to, when you're friends with people, you make friends with them on set, and then you spend 3 months together nonstop. That you get to know people really well, really fast.
Yes.
And making friends outside of that is totally different. It's a slow burn, you know, and you get to see people every once in a while. It's not all day, every day for 3 months. So it's definitely a different dynamic.
There's a lot of like technology, a lot of stuff changing, especially for you and your job. Do your group or your community, do you help each other keep up on that at all? Or is that something that you just got to kind of keep up on to keep up with the gig?
Oh, that's, I feel like probably a little bit of both, but I do feel like we have a lot of networking opportunities in our little group. So I have like a couple of little group chats with other ACs in the industry. And, you know, anytime anyone has a problem with a camera, can't figure out how to rig something, can't find a setting, whatever, pop a picture in there or a video or ask a question or whatever. And I think that whole community really helps all of us kind of learn new things without having to put our hands on it. Nice. So if, you know, 2 other people are going back and forth of like one person's learning a new camera, the other person's worked with it, I can watch that whole exchange. And now I've learned that whole process before I even get to get my hands on the camera. So I think that's honestly a huge part of that, because you can only do so much self-research.
Yeah.
I mean, tons of that stuff comes from experience.
Hands on.
Yeah, just hands-on, having the camera physically in your hand, or the mics, the rigging, the whatever it is. It's really hard to really know how something works until you do it yourself.
Yeah.
So, and I mean, like, yeah, you can Google anything. Fastest way I ever find a solution to a problem is by asking someone who's done it. It's so much faster, it's so much more efficient, and you get little tidbits of like, oh, also if you do this thing that's kind of adjacent to that problem, this is going to happen. So like you get these little supporting tips.
A little class.
Yeah.
Nice.
It's really nice. It's really, really cool.
What was your first place that you traveled to outside of the United States?
I actually have I have a tattoo of this, the passport stamp to Brazil. That was the very first place I traveled internationally, and it was with that show, with Animal Planet. So they had gone international with that show while I was on the show, but I wasn't quite deemed like necessary to go quite yet.
Yeah.
And so when they went to Brazil, that's the first place I went, and we ended up all over the place. We ended up like working and living off of like this very small boat on the river, trying to figure out how to charge stuff and keep things out of the water and try not to get bit by snakes. And I mean, if I got offered that now, I don't know if I would do it, because that was a lot of work, but then I had the best time of my entire life. That was absolutely incredible. And literally on the Amazon River, it was incredible. I had been out of the country before, but to like cities, nowhere, I don't know, nearly as beautiful or like interesting in a way that like I had never really seen before.
Yeah.
So that was absolutely incredible. And that crew to this day is like one of the craziest crews I've ever worked with, like in a really good way. Like just always want to have fun, always want to find the exciting things to do that's local, like hang out with locals, find good places to dance and food to eat, and it's incredible.
What was the have you ever, in any of these places that you've gone, in any of the communities, have you ever had like any ceremonies with any of the communities, or any great meals, or any great stuff? Like I've gone into a few where they've had a big banquet for us and the crew. Have you ever gone into any of those communities and had one of those?
I'm sure there's more times, but the first one that jumps to mind was on my first trip out of the country in Brazil. We were going up and down the river, right? And they must have, I don't know, this was above my pay grade. They must have locked a location with this tribe that was living out there. But we were doing a beat with them about these little blowguns that they have, which was really cool. We did the whole thing, and everyone was very, very kind. It was very cool. Whatever, we got that over with. And then they started being like, hey, do you want to like try the blowguns? We have these like cool bow and arrows. We have so we did like all this cool like target practice stuff with them, and they were showing every single crew member how to pull these like handmade bows back, and how to blow these handmade blow darts. Like all this stuff is all handmade.
Damn.
All like passed down from generation to generation. And we got to like all do this totally off camera, totally, the entire crew, entire cast got to just hang out with them and see how to use them, how they were made, what what kind of process goes into all of that was really cool. And then of course turned into a competition of who could hit the target the best. And it wasn't any of us, surprisingly. But that was really, really cool, because just something that I feel like I wouldn't have experienced that any other way.
Right?
Yeah.
Who on the crew did you want to hit with the blowgun?
Ooh, probably the guy I drove the U-Haul with.
You're like, look over that way. Nailed. I love that about that. Like all the stuff you would never experience.
Never.
Like and go through it. Where was the one that this was the most beautiful moment? Doesn't have to be the best show. Doesn't have to be the thing. Where was the one where it was just like, oh, this is cool?
Honestly, not even filming a scene. It was filming B-roll, but in South Africa, right at the top of a kopje, right at sunrise. And I took in the moment, but I also FaceTime my dad at the same time because it was just like one of those things where I'm like, I am not going to be able to explain this to anybody. Like, it's just like right as the sun hits the sky and like being able to see the entire savannah out there was like one of those moments where it kind of hits you and you're like, first of all, wow, I'm in Africa. And wow, I'm never going to see anything like this again. Like, it's just kind of mind blowing, and it does kind of sit you back a little bit. And I don't know, it kind of made me like take kind of perspective on what I had seen, what I'm able to be a part of, and what, how lucky I am to be able to experience that. And like, I don't know, there's just like this aura that comes off of a sunrise like that in a place that you never thought you'd ever go.
Yeah.
So that was one of those moments where I'm just like, still to this day, I can like envision it. It's like, it's so cool.
Where in the world, like out of all of that, where was one of your like experiences that was like, this is the greatest place I've ever been? Just not even with the shooting, but maybe like as a person, it just kind of hit you. What was your favorite one to ever land in like that?
Oh, I've got two places that I think are my favorite places, but I think like the best experience I had like as a human was going to the Philippines.
Oh.
Went to the Philippines, big shoot. It was my first time on that big of a shoot with, I'm pretty sure that big of a shoot ever. But we were kind of off the beaten path. Like we're still at a big hotel, but like it wasn't like in a major city or anything like that. And just like the beauty of the environment, the like how kind all the people were, like how much fun all the people were. Like I hadn't really had, I guess, real Filipino food before until I got there, and I was like, this food is incredible. The whole experience was like it kind of challenged how I saw a lot of things in a way of like people were never upset there about like, oh, this isn't working, or like this is hard, or this is not going the way I want it to go. It was always, well, we'll just switch gears and do this other thing.
Yeah.
Oh, we'll try this instead, or like, or it's just going to take us longer to get there, or whatever. It was never like, no one got upset about being behind schedule or something not going, like plan A not working.
Yeah.
And it was like, plan A never worked. We should know that by now. But it was just nice to be somewhere where that was the mentality.
That's
the
best.
And that was something that I think I've had a hard time with just in my life in general. Is like, well, this is the way I saw it going, and if it doesn't go that way, I get frustrated.
Oh.
So it was nice to be in an environment where it was like, okay, cool.
That's...
the trucks can't make it? That's fine. We'll pull the gear with this mule. That's fine.
What's your one meal on that show and all the traveling, just that show? We'll get into stuff later. What's the one that pops out? What dinner do you remember on that one?
That's a
with
really
you and your
good
crew?
question.
Yeah, was it a burger, beers on a corner in a hut? You know what I mean? Or...
We did. And you can never really remember if it's because you were just so hungry that it tasted so good, or was it actually that good?
It's always the first.
Yeah, but we were driving. I have no idea where, but we were driving and driving. Like there was some sort of storm or construction or something. We were off our path, and we were just starving, and ended up pulling over to like some tiny little taco stand or something, and all of us ate probably 10 tacos each. Like we were just so hungry, and it was so, I remember it being so good.
Yeah.
Like I stand by that. It was probably the best taco I've ever had in my entire life. And that one of the operators on that, we always gave him shit for always constantly snacking while he was filming, all the time. And he was like, I don't know, guys, I might have to throw in the towel. I've had too many tacos. This is too much even for me. And we're like, wow, if he's saying it's too much, then I think it's time for us to go. But that sticks in my mind just because we were all together.
That's the best part of those. Like, people always say, like, in those crew meals or in those ones, it's not the restaurant or it's not the one. And it's always that in the backwoods is somewhere where you guys just had to get it out. And then it came out like you're in the middle. I was middle of Mexico, and we just were like, it was the end of the day. And I was like, I paid some locals to bring food up.
Yeah.
But nobody had shown up yet, and I thought I'd gotten ripped off, and I was like, hey guys, like I think there's some Rice Krispie treats over on the bar over there. I'm sure that's gonna fill you up after a
that'll
full
be
days
good.
of work, right? And I'm like, and then just off in the horizon, I see this guy and this lady on a donkey, and he's pulling the donkey, and this donkey's got these two pot things on it, and I'm like, this is either going to be really good or really bad. But they
Yep.
came up and laid out this bread, and me and the crew, they just had to this day, the best tacos meals that we had ever had in
Yeah.
our life. And again, I'll stand by it. It was one of the best
Yep.
meals I ever had. But I remember there was about a 15-minute window where I was like, I think I'm about to get beaten up really bad.
There's actually not going to be any food. I can feel it.
And that's to me is always like that thing, especially when you're starting off and you're in those groups or you're responsible as the AC, is when that mistake happens and that I'm the only one that knows about it right now moment. And you're like, there's no food. And like people are coming up like, oh, that was a long day. And you're like,
Yeah, I gotta go check on something real quick.
just running for an airplane to hopefully get home and get out of it. What's your one on the set that you would say is the mistake you remember of all the mistakes that you've ever made?
Hands down, and I think a lot of ACs will have this experience. Is formatting a shot card. I remember this so very vividly that, and it only happened one time. I've been working for 10 years. Only happened the one time, and we were filming, of all things, a build show.
Oh,
Where you
jeez.
cannot reshoot because it's already done. And I had been brought in on that shoot to replace somebody who had lost footage. So as soon as I realized it, I was like, might as well just go home and pack now. I mean, this is going to be it. And it was a crew I had never worked with before. I'd actually been recommended by the post department because my organization, my DIT is fairly good until this one moment. And
It's
it's
just building you up and building you up every step of the way.
Yep. And then it was one of those shows where you're doing everything. You're ACing, you're shooting, you're, fixing gimbals, and you're doing all the downloading, all the charging, all that stuff, And I had gotten to the habit, I had come up with this really neat tray that was wooden, and I had put Velcro everywhere, so my laptop and all the card readers and the drives would all Velcro to it. So I could buckle it in to the passenger seat of the van so it could download while we were driving back to the hotel, because I also had to drive the van. So what I figured out had happened was I put 4 cards down to download and only 3 downloaded. And the 4th never downloaded. And I don't know what made me think of that the next day, and as I was loading cards into the camera. And as I see you hit the format and you see it loading, and as it's loading, I'm like, oh shit, I don't think I checked this one. And that's the moment where I'm like, I'm the only one who knows about this. I'm going back through, I'm frantically looking. I'm like, it's got to be here somewhere. It's got to be here somewhere. And I was like, I just got to go back and pack my stuff now. I might as well just go.
Yeah.
But they were incredibly good about it. I went directly to the DP and was like, listen, here's what happened. Here's the footage that we're missing from which camera. I don't know what to tell you. Like, it's gone. I have exactly the card, but I formatted and the camera is gone. And he kind of had that moment where his face kind of falls. He's like, okay, don't worry about it.
Yeah.
We'll figure it out.
Yeah.
And like, they were just so good about it because they knew about it right at the moment. But that sinking feeling, just like vividly seeing the loading bar and like having that thought of, I didn't look. I didn't check it.
That's the one for
And
me.
I never, ever made that mistake again. Ever.
What's your favorite type of show to be working on as far as like the type of content you're creating? Is there one you like? Documentaries, reality, types of reality? Which ones that you're like, oh, this is going to be a fun one?
Yeah. I think I have the most fun on things that are more like docu-follow, kind
Okay.
of. Like,
Yeah.
I think it falls under the umbrella of reality for most people, but things that are like the the cast you're filming is going through an authentic experience. So no matter what they're doing, and I just don't get that same feeling from like big dating shows or anything like that. It's like, yeah, they're doing the thing, but it's very like laid out. It feels very like regimented and scripted, I'd rather be, as challenging as it can be, I would rather be on a set where you don't really know what's coming next. You don't know how long this activity is going to last. You don't know where you're going or how far you're walking or when you're going to be able to wrap, because it feels like you're actually documenting something that's real.
Yeah.
Like reality is supposed to be. And that's like where I have more fun. Nice. Because at least I can be pulled into the experience a little bit, and it feels more like an experience than a job.
Yeah.
And that's like, it kind of brings it full circle to me. I like. When
you're doing that, right? When you're doing that, give me like your basic overall like responsibilities.
Yeah. I always found myself in scenarios for shows like that where it's very small crew. So I either have or I take control of pretty much all the gear. So if I can have my hands on every piece of gear, I would love that. So taking inventory of everything, making sure we have everything to make everything work, charge, setting up the whole prep area is one of my favorite responsibilities to have. I like to have a flow. Fixing anything that's broken, because it always lands broken for some reason. And managing all of that, and then getting everything in an ergonomic way to get out to the field. So like having that responsibility of, things come from the States into this country. We got to unbox it, get everything set up. Love that. But then reformatting that in a way where it can get from our lodge or our hotel or wherever to filming in like the most effective way. Like to me, that's the really fun part, is like, how can I make this like the most streamlined? And then figuring out then what's actually needed, what we're missing, that kind of stuff. And then coming back at the end of the day, reviewing footage, downloading all the footage, putting everything back on charge, and getting everything ready to do it again. So that's like kind of the scope. Is like, I always found myself on shows where I kind of did a little bit of everything, because it makes it easier for me to know the entire process if I do the entire process myself.
Yes.
Kind of thing.
Yep.
So the only part of that entire process that I never really loved a lot was actually filming, which I find very funny. It's like, I'll do
the actual shooting part.
Yeah, I'll do everything leading right up into that, and they're like, "Hey, do you want to film this?" I'm like, do I have to? Because I could just go. There's a camera that's broken. I gotta fix it. So
just let you do that.
Yeah, it's. I would find here and there it got really interesting, and I'd like to film it, but it either was too much pressure or they were just not. I don't know. It's just like not the way my brain works. I'd rather be tinkering. I'd rather be organizing. I'd rather be doing that kind of stuff. So.
How physically demanding does that become for you specifically out there?
Pretty physically demanding. I mean, I like to say that, my job was the best gym I ever could have.
Myself am in the rear with the gear. I have a body by donut, like back now. It's not good. It's not good.
Yeah,
but was it like, what is it like for you, like with that?
It's pretty hefty, and that's, I think, where I started to really show interest in, like, how do I make this as efficient as possible? Because if I'm the one hauling stuff in and out, if I'm the one who has to prep it every day and wrap it every night, how can I make this the most efficient so I can bring that toll on my body down? But that's a lot, man. I mean, that's even just getting gear into country, unloading off the pallets and lining all the cases up, figuring out where everything is. You're bending over, you're sitting on the ground, you're trying to get everything set up in a way, and then even just getting from hotel to location is loading everything up into whatever vehicle it is, because it's not always a car. It could be a boat. Getting gear onto boats will forever be the bane of my existence. It makes me so nervous every time. But
I've had a couple, like I had Ecuador, things like that, where it's like we get into the reserve,
Mm-hmm.
and that's the only form of transportation for the entire 3 months that you're there. You're
Oh, yeah.
boats. That's it.
Yeah.
Like you're literally just going from patch to patch and
Yeah.
going with it. Oh, it's
Yeah.
and like even as you're saying, like because they're all boats, river boats, so they're
Oh,
always
yeah. Always. Yeah,
and
you gotta load it
locals are
up
just
right.
throwing everything on. You're just like.
When we were going back and forth for Peru a couple years back, it's like the big boat, kind of big, I guess, from the boat we were living on to where we were filming was like, okay, that one was fine. You could just load stuff up, whatever.
Yeah.
People, gear, that's fine. But then the river was so low that we couldn't get the big boats into the tributary where we actually needed to film. And so we had to transfer everything from the medium boat onto these little tiny boats with these little tiny motors. And then we had to think of, okay, which cases are heavy, which cases are not. How much do people weigh? How much does gear weigh? And like, you can't load it like that in and of itself from boat to boat was just
That was
so
Peru.
hectic. That was Peru.
Same thing happened to me in Peru,
Mm-hmm.
but when we picked our camp, I went out the next morning. We're gonna be out there for a week, and I go out the next morning. We went down this tributary, and I looked around, and I was like, "Did the river go down a little bit?" And they were like, "Yeah, don't worry about it." And I was like, "Okay."
Yep.
And the next day I come out, I was like, "That river's really going down, right? Like I'm not. Am I
making
making
this
that up, right?" I'm like, "That's a whole tree I'm almost seeing right there, right?" And they're like, "Don't even worry about it."
Mm-hmm.
End of the week, there's no river, and
course not.
I'm like, couple miles from the actual main Amazon. So the locals go, okay, we're going to go hire a bunch of people over here from this community, and they're going to come over and we'll walk it out for you. And it's going to cost you nothing. I'm like, great.
Perfect.
So they hike all of our gear out, but by the time they got to the Amazon, the main thing, they've stolen everything.
Of
So
course.
they've got the REI headlamps on. And I'm on the riverbank like I'm at the end of Risky Business, just buying everything back from these people. I'm like, camera? Yeah. Oh, yeah. You want to buy this beautiful new camera? Yep. I'm going to need that one too. And it's just, I was like in my head, I was like, why did this river go away? But like,
Why?
learn my
Why?
lesson. Like next time, don't go up the tributary. It's going down.
That
But
sounds very, very familiar. It was like,
Oh.
but then it was like, how long do we have to do this for? Like, is the river going to come up or is it going to keep going down? So every day was like, am I going to have to do a boat to boat transfer like every single day or not? So
did you ever, what's the best thing that you've ever come up with as far as like your own engineering, like to do a boat to boat across? You ever do anything like that? You ever come up with something, any sort of like gear thing?
from boat to boat, no, but I do have a very fun boat to island rigging that we did in the Philippines that first time I was there. And that was, honestly very proud of it.
What'd you do? What was that?
So we got in when it was scouted. It was calm and that they could bring the boat right up.
It's all when they scout, right? It's
Always,
always
yeah.
just beautiful and sunny,
Yeah, they're
70
like, it'll
degrees.
be great. And we roll up. There's like 5 of us on this boat.
There's a big bomb crater. And then dark
Yeah, we
clouds.
roll up. Waves are crashing on this. It's a rock island. There's nowhere to go. It's like the size of this room. It's not even that big of an island. And we're just all sitting there, we're watching, and we're talking to the boat guy. We're like, can you get the boat up to there? And he's like, no. What? No, of course not. We're like, okay. We're like, okay, so either we're on a time schedule,
Yep.
we have to get this done.
What are we fixing?
What are we doing here? And I think it's because we were like surrounded by this can-do attitude in the week prior, all of us just kind of look at each other like, we can figure this out, right? Everyone down to figure this out? Okay, cool, let's do it. And so me and the operator start like pulling. That was back in my early AC days where I brought everything in my backpack. Everything. Rope, paracord, carabiners, zip ties, duct tape, like literally everything. All the camera and gears in dry bags, thank God. And so we're like, okay, how are we going to do this? And operator's like, listen, I'm going to jump in. I'm going to swim to that island. I'm going to hang out over there. You're going to throw me a rope. It's like, great. He's like, then we'll try to pull the boat in. I'm like, okay, cool. We do that. He's like, this is not going to work. I'm like, I have these carabiners here. we could just zip line the gear to you. He's like, that might work. So I start going through my bag. I'm pulling out all these carabiners. I'm putting carabiners on the handles of the Pelican cases, on the dry bags with the cameras and stuff. And so he's on the other side. I jump in. I swim across into there, which was terrifying in and of itself.
Oh.
But, I mean, at the time, not so scary. Like, it was fine. But looking back on it, I'm like, that was kind of terrifying. I get over there. We're all soaking wet. We're like, whatever. We get over there. He's holding the rope. And the people on the boat with the gear clip, one piece of gear on at a time. They tied a piece of paracord to it and threw the paracord to me so that I could, because the rope is like tilted the wrong way, right? So I gotta pull it up. So we would just wait until the waves would get us close enough, and then they would push it on the rope, and I would just pull the paracord, and the operator's just holding the rope as tight as he can. And we did that for every single piece of gear to get it onto the rock, and then everyone one by one jumped off the boat, swam to the island, and we got on and we filmed our whole thing.
But you getting back off, were you able to get it without?
Oh no, I had to zip line it all back off. Yeah, and we had to go back and do it the next morning as well.
Unbelievable!
It was absolutely incredible. I couldn't believe that we got it done.
Damn, that's impressive. Again, because there's certain times where you're like, even if there's too much danger, there's too much stuff, you got to kind of stop it down. But damn, you were
luckily,
not stopping.
That was survival show, so we have medics and stuff. So that was kind of the risk analysis I think everyone made was okay, where are we at? How confident is everybody swimming? If people weren't confident swimming, it would have been a no-go.
Yeah.
Everyone's like, sick, love to swim, all good. We have medics. We have 3 different boats.
Yeah.
Heaven forbid we got to get out of here. We totally can.
That's cool.
All that stuff. And I had a great time. Loved doing it. One of my favorite stories, favorite videos, favorite everything. If I was presented with that today, probably not.
Wouldn't do it.
Probably not. Because I'm just like, I just was like, it's just too much risk. I think I was young then. I was, 20, I don't know, 23, 24. And I was like, yeah, it seems like a great idea. Let's do it.
Do you think there's more risk today than back then, or back then there's more risk than
back then there was more risk?
Yeah. You think they're able to put more stuff in play for the crews today?
I think so. I think people are also more aware of what is possible to have available to you for safety.
Yeah.
I think earlier on I didn't even know that a safety team was a thing. I was, medics made sense to me. I was like, yeah, medics make sense. We should have that. But I don't know, back then it was kind of just roughing it.
Yeah, a lot of times it was like, who's the safety person? It was like, well, who's got the first aid kit?
Yeah.
Oh, it's back over there. Well, that's the safety guy. Yeah. And you're like, okay, this is not a good day.
Yeah.
What's it like also having to deal with all of that as a woman? We all know we're going to countries that don't always have even laws that are protecting of women or anything. How has that been, especially with danger or having to get over that with the locals or anything?
Yeah, there's really only one place that pops to mind where I knew it was going to be an issue, but most places it just kind of feels like a boys' club, which the industry kind of is to begin with. I've always been a tomboy. I've always liked running with the boys to begin with. I like the challenge. I think it's fun. Here and there, a little annoying, But I was always that person, when the teacher asks, hey, I'm going to need a couple strong boys to come bring out the chairs. I was the one over there carrying 10 chairs in 4th grade,
And you've done enough of these shows where I wouldn't pull half of the guys and ask them to move the chairs anyway.
Yeah, right? It's that kind of thing didn't ever bother me that much. And a lot of the countries we went to, it was the same sort of thing. It was just you prove yourself right off the bat, but I knew I always had to. I knew it's you just got to start strong.
Yep.
And prove no, I'm good. You don't need to help me out of the truck. You don't need to carry my stuff for me.
Yeah.
So as long as I started out strong, I was good. There was only one place I went with a show, and the company was very good about this because it was a mostly female crew. And we were going to Qatar.
Oh.
And they called each crew member and said, hey, here's the deal. This is where we're going. Here are the laws that are in place. Here's what we're worried about. We want you to like know this up front so that you can make your own decision. And if you choose that like this is not something you want to be a part of or not somewhere you want to visit, totally fine. We'll just have someone replace you for that one shoot and we'll bring you right back. Like no harm, no foul. And that I thought was very cool because it gave us a heads up and time to think about it. And not only was I a woman going into that country, but I'm also queer. So going into that environment where it was like, hey, first of all, none of the men are going to respect you when you talk to them, nor should you really ever be speaking to men without your fixing company with you, because it's just not acceptable there. And you cannot talk about your sexuality ever because they can actually put you in jail. So they're like, and again, they were super good about like giving me enough time to decide that. And everyone ended up at the end of the day saying, nope, it's all good. Thank you for the heads up. We know what we're getting into now.
Yeah.
And let's go for it. Let's do it. And so that was, and it was a little bit surreal being there and like looking around and knowing that it just feels very weird. That ended up being a whole thing. And not only could you feel it, but then once we started trying to film was like trying to talk to shop owners or trying to get releases or trying to do any of that. Thank God we had a really good fixing company. Yeah. They were phenomenal, but they were very clear of like, you have to talk through us and we will talk to them because otherwise we're not going to get anything done. Yes. We're not going to get anything done. You're going to be offended. They're going to be offended. It's going to be a whole mess. Yeah. Like we got your back. We understand. Yeah. Like, I know that you're the boss. I know that you guys need to get done what you need to get done, but you have to go through us. Yeah. Like, it's just the way it works in this part of the world. You just have to do it.
Has there been anything that you would say that you're thankful for because it has made you this way or that way?
Yeah. Two aspects of that, actually. Big thing is when I first started doing this stuff, I'm like not really an angry person to begin with, but when I first started in the industry, I didn't know how to like separate anger and frustration. And so learning how to navigate that has been super helpful to me just in every aspect of life. I went through several years of not realizing that I let that kind of take over my personality. I would kind of go from 0 to 60. And like, if things weren't going right, I would just like, jump straight to being super mad about it. Oh yeah. Yelling, throwing stuff, I have thrown so many things out of the back of a U-Haul. It's not even funny. So much. And it took that very first showrunner who hired me to be like, yo, we're going to need you to ratchet it back.
We need to bring this back to a 9.
We're at a 27 right now. If you could just bring it back to a 9, that would be great.
I do that all the time.
Yeah, it's wild because I didn't think that would, because I'm not like that in my personal life, generally speaking. But as my life became more and more work, I was traveling all the time. I was like, I'm like this all the time about everything. And once that showrunner pointed it out to me, because of course I didn't even see it. Yeah. I was like, oh my God, this is not good. So that in and of itself is huge because I got to identify that and figure out how to separate anger and frustration. Nice. Which is like two very different things and can be expressed in ways that don't include throwing things out of the back of a U-Haul. Yeah,
but sometimes things need to go out the back of a U-Haul.
Sometimes they gotta go out. Sometimes they got to, So that has been super, super helpful for me. Do love that. I can like still feel it in my body, throwing things. Like, it felt so good to just chuck things out the back of the U-Haul.
We all get that frustration on set. That's part of it and stuff, but it's always that moment where you can kind of get back to like, all right, I'm a rock star. I'm working on rock star stuff. Let's just get back to I was taking life seriously for a minute.
Yeah, yeah. So that was one. That's one for sure. And then something that I didn't ever see myself loving is like teaching other people things that I know how to do. Oh. It's like that whole teaching aspect. Yeah. I found myself like really loving that. Like training people to either do the job that I'm doing or teaching someone how this specific camera works, or how this position works on this certain show. Like, even just going through like making just protocols for things, and like just trying to like teaching people how things work the best for me, at least.
Yeah.
And like understanding that difference between like how my brain works, someone else's brain works, but like trying to teach people in a way that makes sense to them and gets the point across of like, this is the end product that has to come out of it. How you get to it is kind of up to you, but like, this is my process and this is why. And so that whole thing has been super interesting to me, because I've been able to apply that to a bunch of things outside of work.
Nice.
Which has been really, really interesting, because if you had told me when I was in high school or college that I would love teaching people stuff, I'd be like, you're shitting me. There's no way. I don't have the patience for that. There's no way. But I love it. I absolutely love it.
That's awesome. That's good you find something like that.
Yeah.
If you had to give advice or say to somebody about like coming into the industry or anything like that, what advice would you give them right now?
To number one, go for it. If you want to do it, go for it.
That's first off the best. You got to just go.
Yeah, you just have to do it, because a lot of times you don't know why, but you feel a pull somewhere and you just got to follow it through, because you're never going to know unless you try. So number one, if you want it, go for it.
Nice.
And then ask questions. Ask every single question you could possibly think of, because not only will you get the answers and then you will learn those things, but also it's going to show everyone around you that you give a shit. You actually want to learn and you want to know the things, and that I think people look for more than actual knowledge.
Yep.
It's like, if you are curious enough to want to find out how to do something and do it right, that's literally all you need.
Brianna, thank you so much for today. Thanks for coming in.
Of course, thanks for
Did you have
having
fun?
me. I did. I had a great time.
Yeah, it was good. That's awesome. Well, hopefully I'm going to be able to run into you on a set.